Revolution, where you are invited to revel in your becoming better and brighter on purpose. This isn't just a show, it's a prayer disguised as a podcast, and together we are evolving on purpose. Visit www.celestialempowerment.com for more information.
Tune in to the Flourish Frequency Show with me, Beth Larson, every third Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on Transformation Talk Radio. Get ready to activate and amplify the frequencies of success, happiness, and abundance so you can live a life of more joy, more energy, more passion, more money, and more meaning. For more information, visit BethLarsonCoaching.com.
Welcome to Intuition Unleashed, a revolution in personal liberation. The go-to podcast that helps you access intuitive guidance combined with mental health and spirituality. Let your intuition guide you and unlock a life of true liberation. And now your host, Beck Nelson.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Intuition Unleashed. I am your host, Beck Nelson. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, psychic medium, and also now soon to be hypnotherapist, which I'm adding to my practice, which we've talked about in our previous two episodes. Refer to those to get some more information about that. Welcome back to another episode. And today we're going to talk about when your body feels like it's the enemy. So we're talking about chronic illness, emotional healing, and taking back your life. And I am joined today by my guest, Megan Harold. Hi, Megan.
Hello, Beck. It's so great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here for a number of reasons, which we've talked about. But let me just tell you a little bit about Megan. Megan Harold is the founder of the Tenacious Wellness Coaching, and she's a certified integrative mental health coach. So Megan supports adults living with chronic illness and those navigating the family caregiving piece, which I really want to talk about too. So through her meaning-centered coaching approach, she helps clients reconnect with purpose, build trust with their bodies, and create a sense of steadiness, even in the face of ongoing uncertainty. Her work blends practical evidence-informed mental health strategies, which I can certainly relate to with my own background, and a deeper exploration of identity, intuition, and what it means to live well within real-life limitations. She's known for her gentle, compassionate style. Megan empowers clients to move away from all or nothing thinking and towards small, sustainable shifts that support both emotional well-being and more meaningful, connected lives. Now, this is something I can really relate to, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, but I was telling Megan when we kind of talked about what are we going to bring out today, because a lot of people are dealing with chronic mental illnesses that people wouldn't necessarily even know you have. A lot of those are autoimmune diseases. Is that right, Megan?
Yeah, autoimmune is really common for sure.
And my own mom deals with it. I'm like calling out my mom. My mom has Sjogren's and lupus and an epilepsy. And what we're really going to talk about today is not only what is it like to be that person that has these, because these are a lot of invisible illnesses that people don't even know that you have. And so they kind of might think that you're faking it, or you might think that you're faking it or making it up. We're going to talk about that, and also what it's like to care for and support people in these positions. Megan, before I get started, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Sure.
My signature question here, in reflecting on my own life, and this is what I do for my guests, I usually find that there's a time in your life when the universe sort of gives you what we call an opportunity for growth. Although at the time you may not have seen it that way or thought it was an opportunity to growth, you might have thought, gee, this just really sucks. Why is this happening to me? And what happens is over time that those experiences actually shape the work that you're doing today or some of your own personal growth. So do you have a similar story? And is that something you'd be willing to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely love this question. And for me, there was a key moment in my life. And what's interesting when I look back is this moment wasn't in the grand scheme of things a really big deal, but it had such a profound impact on me. So when I was in college, I had to take a physics course, and this physics class, it was made extremely difficult on purpose because they wanted it to challenge the students academically, but also they wanted to see who can actually stay with it when it's difficult, and like who can really just keep at it. And they create these courses as a weed out class, and this was primarily for engineering students. Now, I was not an engineering student, but I still had to take this class. And so that was, at the time I was like, well, this is stupid and unfair, but what can you do? So I'm in this class, and physics isn't a subject that I'm good at to begin with. So I was like, okay, here we go. And I'm just, struggling through this, kind of getting through by the skin of my teeth. I was able to get through the homework assignments thanks to a really wonderful classmate that helped me out. And I was getting horrendous grades on the quizzes, but thankfully there was a curve. Thank goodness for the curve. But as I was in this class and just struggling, and I kind of decided, I really want to learn this material. I really want to figure out what the heck it is that they're trying to teach me. And so I decided that every evening after dinner, I would sit down with the material for about an hour, so not a super long time, and I would just sit with it and read things over and think through it. And it was really tough to do. And it felt really frustrating for the majority of time that I did it, but I did it night after night. And leading up through the whole semester, leading up to the final, and the week of the final came around, and I sat down with the material, and all of a sudden, like it seemed out of nowhere, something clicked, and I was like, oh my gosh, I understand this. And it was just like this moment where I was like, all of that time that I spent of consistently showing up day after day, and it wasn't like I was spending hours and hours every day. It was just that little bit of time. It really built up to something. And I've never been so proud of a B- in my life because I did really well on the final, and I was like, this is amazing. And so what that lesson taught me was the power of tenacity. And that's actually where it was that lesson is where I got the name for my coaching practice from, where I got Tenacious Wellness from, is how I learned the power of gentle determination. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of going into a goal or a habit that they want to build with this intensity and this striving. And what I have found through experience, and that experience at the physics class in particular, is that it doesn't need to be intense. You don't need to be grasping. It's all about consistency. It's just doing it again and again. And also realizing that there is often something that James Clear in his book Atomic Habits calls the plateau of latent potential, that there is often this period of time where you're not going to see the change. It's going to be really frustrating. He calls it the valley of disappointment, which I think is a really great term for it. But then there will be this moment, this aha moment, where you seem to take this leap, and what you can really see all of the work that you're doing coming to fruition. So yeah, taking that class and kind of seeming like I was banging my head against the wall really taught me that, it's all about just that gentle determination and that tenacity.
Gentle determination. I like that definition.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, is you're tying that directly into the name of your practice.
Yeah, it's really something that has stuck with me like since I took that class, and as I have approached various challenges in my life. And when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in 2017, I have applied that same principle to how I'm going to navigate this illness and how I'm going to care for myself and worked on optimizing my health.
And I want to get into that too, because that talks a little bit about the why that you do the work that you do. And I always find as a business owner, a lot of people can relate to the fact that they ask you to talk about your ideal client avatar, right? Like, who's your ideal client? They always start you there when you're talking about business. And truly, your ideal client is probably you.
Probably.
Yep. I'm like, my ideal client is a little bit sassy, probably would prefer a sweatshirt, would probably prefer her head in a headband, and is probably tenacious. I'm going to use that. So I knew I liked you for a reason, Megan. I really love that definition. So you sounds like what another thing that you're saying is like sometimes people can push too hard.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'll stick to people with chronic illness, but this can apply to anyone.
Yeah.
Is that we can apply way too much effort in like too condensed amount of time. And what does that do? That makes us stressed out, and it can cause us to burn out. And how I work with clients and myself when we're working on building any sort of goal, when we're trying to create any sort of habit, I always draw the line at if this is causing a measurable increase in your stress level, we need to bring it back, because we do not want to have any sort of physical health goal create a mental health issue. And so that's very important to me, is that and also I've seen that isn't really necessary. Like, we don't have to try to do these major things. We can start small and build from there.
This is a great point too, because one of the principles of founding principles for my practice is something I learned in graduate school, which is and learning to be a therapist. Most of the time, what people bring to you as their issues in counseling is their intended solutions that created bigger problems.
Yeah.
I have just over and over again, this was, over 30 years ago, and that just still keeps ringing true. Like, people are pushing themselves too hard, and it's actually causing this way bigger issue.
Yes, 100%.
So thank you for sharing that. So let's kind of parlay that. Tell me a little bit about, you said you were diagnosed with arthritis, and then what did you end up studying in school, in college?
That's a great question. I studied geology in school, which is clearly not what I'm doing now. At the time when I was going into college, I was torn between doing something in geology and like the nature earth space, because I was passionate about that. And I was also passionate about psychology. I have my own history of mental illness struggles. And I ended up going with geology. And it was one of those things where at the time I kind of just made the decision that seemed to make the most sense to me at the time. And I really was following my intuition in that moment. And I don't think I could really say why that's what I chose. But looking back, I now know that that's what I chose because I wasn't at a place in my own healing where I was ready to study psychology and help people as a therapist. So I needed to spend some time doing something else, getting other experiences, learning other skills. And it was still really fruitful, and I enjoyed it and I learned so much, but it's ultimately not the direction I wanted to go for the long term.
That's okay, because what your geology is really crystals. But we have some other episodes on that. All right, so go back and you can show me. I bet you have a crystal collection. Let's go back anyway. Yes, right. So anyway, so you were diagnosed with your own chronic illness, and then tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was diagnosed in 2017. I had moved from Minnesota to the Seattle area just that year, just like 6 months before my diagnosis. So I was going through this big life change, going through a job change, and then I started having strange inflammation and pain in my joints. Didn't make any sense. So I went to the doctor and eventually was diagnosed with RA. and I was 24. So that was a huge, it really rocked my world, I guess is the best way to describe it. Um, I was at the age where I think many of us felt like we're in our early 20s. We're invincible. We can do anything. Like, who needs to care about my body? And my body came in. It was just like, excuse me, that you need to pay attention to me. It's time. You have to care for me. And I wasn't ready. I did not want to deal with it. I took, I was able to accept my diagnosis, but it took me a long time to really accept that I had to change the way I lived my life. I had to change the way I thought about myself and how I approached my relationships and work. I just at first thought the medication would take care of everything. So I just was like, take my medicine, everything will be good. And I learned over the course of the next couple of years that that was not the case. And I had to kind of rewrite my life in some ways and create something new and different than I expected.
So what exactly does this mean? You know, you're talking about one of your things is you learn to trust your body again.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to you when you say that someone feels that their bodies kind of let them down? And then what happens like inside when that trust is like broken?
Oh, well, when someone says that their body has let them down, essentially what that means is that it's not, it's no longer allowing you to live the life you want to live, do the things you want to do, um, show up for life in the way you want, and in some ways, even dramatically fulfill the dreams that you have. It's just you feel like your body is not working with you. It's working against you. Um, so what that feels like, it's it's hard to explain in words what that feels like. It's just like it's a very deep hurt, anger, and frustration. Um, and it it's a really difficult place to be.
So maybe we start with what are some of the typical disorders that people kind of that you work with? What do you see a lot of?
Sure. I work a lot with people who have autoimmune illnesses. And autoimmune illnesses are really interesting because they're not consist, you don't have symptoms consistently. So they're really hard to predict. They show up differently for everyone, and they can affect all different parts of your body. So I work with clients on how do we navigate those times when the symptoms are flaring, and then how do we work in on our health to try to keep the flare-ups from happening. And then I work with clients who are cancer survivors. So they're after their cancer treatment, they might be cancer free, but their bodies are completely different, and they need to learn how to work with their bodies as they are and adjust things in a way that works for them and kind of go through that grieving process from, how things used to be versus how they are now.
And that goes back to the story that you told at the beginning, when people they're focused over here on, I can't live my life the way that I've always wanted to, and grieving that. But then also shifting to how can I address or meet my body where it's at now, which is a little tougher.
It is tougher. And I think it's really important for people to remember, or if you're supporting someone who has a chronic illness diagnosis, that you have to go through the period of grief, and you have to just let yourself feel all of those feelings about what you're losing, about what you've lost, and how that may not come back for you. And I think a lot of times we want to skip that, or we want the person we're caring for to skip that and be like, okay, let's move on. But it's a big deal, and you have to take that time. And then once you take that time, you're really able to move on stronger. And yeah.
I think the other thing is that that is not a destination. You're not just going to suddenly
No.
say, I'm over it now. You're going to have days where you're like, this sucks, and days where you're like, okay, this is how it is. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, 100%. Grief is something, and I think this goes for anyone who's experienced grief, whether it's from the loss of a loved one or, the loss of anything, really. Grief is not something that completely goes away. It just shows up in different ways and at different volumes.
And it's
So
not linear.
it's
Yeah.
not linear. It is not linear. So that is one of the things that I work on with my clients is how do we befriend grief and how do we learn how to work with grief and when I say befriend grief, what I mean is when it shows up, how do we not panic or like think that we're doing something wrong or think that there's something wrong? We just say, oh, hello, here you are. It's you're back.
And some
Yeah.
days you're like, hello, I want to punch you in the face. Okay. But
Well, I mean, sometimes we probably feel like we want to punch one of our friends in the face, like it's
the illness itself, personifying the illness as well.
yes, for sure.
And you're talking about, you mentioned people that are recovering from chemotherapy, etc., or radiation. I have a lot of clients that might be nodding their heads about this because their body's not the same, their hair's not the same, etc. But can you talk, so specifically autoimmune diseases? I mentioned the ones that my mom has, which are Sjogren's, lupus, and her epilepsy, which is that in all cases considered an autoimmune disease?
Epilepsy?
Yes.
I don't think so. I think that, yeah, not necessarily, but yeah.
Separate. And then are we also talking about MS?
MS is an autoimmune condition. Yes, definitely. Rheumatoid arthritis, which I mentioned before. There's also something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is a mouthful. And then Lyme disease, I believe, is also maybe, yeah.
Okay.
I need to fact check me on that. But yeah. And so I think, fibromyalgia is the one that I'm also forgetting. Yes.
I've been diagnosed with that one. Okay. And so I can take some of these from my personal experiences, but we can also talk about your clients as well. So there's this emotional impact how long did it take you for them? Because sometimes it takes a while for them to figure out what's going on. And often it's a diagnosis of exclusion.
Yeah. So are we speaking to my personal experience?
But any of them, yes.
Okay. I'll speak to my personal. It took a lot longer than I would have liked for my diagnosis to come in. And you're right, it is a diagnosis of exclusion. And a lot of times, so like each categorization of an autoimmune condition will have overlapping symptoms. So you kind of will have this Venn diagram that the doctors are trying to work through, and they're getting better at it. But in my case, what made it tricky, I guess, for my doctor is that my blood work came back and it showed a strong indication of RA. But the way that my symptoms were manifesting was not consistent. So she did not want to provide a definitive diagnosis of RA until I got some additional tests done. So I had an extra, month or so of waiting and testing. And you're shaking. Yeah, it was frustrating. I did not appreciate it. But it's a really tricky thing to diagnose. So I try to give my doctor a little bit of grace, but it was,
the thing is, are they giving you some grace? Because what's not happening is what this experience is like. You're dealing with these two pieces, how this is showing up physically in your body, and then the emotional piece of it. Am I ever going to be the same again?
100%. This is why I coach, is for that exact reason, is because when I went to the doctor, I was eventually given a diagnosis, which, there was no emotional support along the way with that. And then after my diagnosis, I was given medication and told that when I have flare-ups of symptoms to rest. And I'm like, okay. And then that's it. But I'm, thinking to myself, okay, well, everything is different. My body is different. I don't understand this body now. I don't know how to communicate with my workplace, like what I can, how do I navigate that? How do I navigate my friendships, my partner, and all of that stuff? And then how do I deal? There's just so much more stuff that you have to deal with. It's almost like even logistically, it can feel like a full-time job. So there is just not a lot of support in the conventional space for chronic illness.
Are you able to, you talked about a lot of pieces, and work is one that people don't talk a lot about either. Like, how do you communicate this to work? Because if you don't have a sore throat or a cold, how do you communicate to people who don't experience these diseases that I'm just having an off day and I just need to stay home and rest? That sounds like a cop out to some people who don't understand it, I'm sure. So talk a little bit about that. Do you have some examples of yourself, your clients, where you've worked through some of these issues?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when it comes to the workplace, generally what I suggest to my clients and what I apply myself is to say as little as possible while still providing the necessary explanation where it needs to be given. So when you work with your direct supervisor or HR, you provide them like the doctor's note, like any sort of official like backing that you can get to show that I have this chronic condition, and you can have your doctor say, like even say if you, my client or my patient, might have needed some days off because of their condition, they can send a letter. And so anything you can do to back yourself up, it's pretty common that your chronic illness will be covered by the ADA, so you'll have some protection there. But that's definitely something to look into. So yeah, just making sure that you try to cover yourself as much as possible. And then when it comes to, communicating with your other coworkers, you don't need to share a lot. You can keep things like pretty minimal. There might be some coworkers that have shown that they are trustworthy and sympathetic, and you've already built some sort of rapport with them. Then you can share a little more if you want, but you do not need to you don't need to over explain to justify yourself is really the most important thing.
Okay, and you mentioned you're covered by the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act.
Yeah. Yeah.
And go ahead.
Oh, well, go ahead.
So your doctor can, one of the tips that I use for my own clients is you can actually take the words from that law, the ADA, and have them put some very similar verbiage in their letter so that you almost don't have, like, they have no choice. Like, they meet these criteria, ...
Right. Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Learn your rights. For sure.
Sure. And so we're going to be in a break in a couple of minutes, but what I really want to talk about is sort of the very practical applications. We can talk about in general how this works, but if we could use your own clients' experiences and maybe even your own experiences, what started to happen to make you feel like this thing of your body is working against you, or it has now is starting to let you down? Let's talk about how you were taking medication and it wasn't getting any better, and then how you learned, wait a minute, this isn't just me taking medication and it's suddenly going to be better. You really have to use your intuition to understand what your body really needs and start working with it instead of against it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I had to learn to have a relationship with my body, to just really be in relationship with it and to stop ignoring it, because that's what I had done really up until that point for a variety of reasons, whether that's kind of what we learn in Western society or because I was in my early 20s and why would I worry about that?
Who thinks about that? No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So
first you have to get over, I shouldn't have to, right?
Exactly. And I I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? I am barely getting by, and that's not good enough for me. So we need to figure out something else. And I think the first thing I need to do is start to tune in and really see what's going on with my body and what it needs.
Okay. We're going to be taking a 2-minute break. And when we come back from break, we're going to come back and talk with Megan about all those pieces, tuning into your body, helping to work with your body instead of working against it, and using your own intuition to help you grow and heal when we come back.
Are you ready to break free from self-sabotaging patterns and reclaim your power? I'm Beck Nelson, licensed therapist, spiritual mentor, and psychic medium, helping individuals achieve true personal liberation through my Beckology framework. This step-by-step system shifts your mindset, strengthens your intuition, and empowers lasting change. Work with me through single sessions, 90-day or 6-month programs, or explore my courses, books, and coaching. Visit becknelson.com to get started.
Are you constantly triggered by your mother? Do you feel that no matter what you've tried, you cannot break out of your repeating patterns that are keeping you stuck? Do you feel sad, angry, or frustrated for no apparent reason? From Birth into Brilliance is a profound exploration of how our birth experiences can deeply influence various aspects of our lives. I emphasize that the way we were born and the environment we were born into affects everything from our emotional health to our physical coordination and mental clarity. My approach combines ancestral healing, reprogramming the neural pathways in your brain, and energy work to help you rebalance and break free from limiting beliefs and repetitive patterns. Are you ready to dig deep? For more information, visit shannonbtb.com. That's shannonbtb.com.
Are you curious about how the quantum energy world impacts your health and well-being? Join medical intuitive Jane Phillips as she provides a space for insight, growth, and transformation with practical tools and perspectives to help you stay positive, navigate challenges, and reclaim your personal power. Visit janecphillips.com to book a session or class and explore how energy wisdom can help you heal and thrive.
Welcome back, everybody, from the break. We're here with my guest, Megan Harold, and we're talking about chronic illnesses and living with chronic illnesses to live your best life. Megan, we were talking before the break specifically about how once you hear about a diagnosis, first of all, you really have to give yourself some time to grieve. The life that you thought that you had planned out for yourself is not what you expected, and you have to regroup and give yourself some time for that.
Yeah, for sure.
When you personally, or maybe you can speak to some of the experiences of your clients, when you work with somebody who's starting to feel like their body is betraying them, bring me through a regular day. Like, how did this show up for you, and what do you mean by that?
Sure. So how this would show up for me. So the rheumatoid arthritis impacts your joints primarily. So I would go through periods of time where one or multiple of my joints would be swollen, painful, and then sometimes immobile. So it would cause pain and also loss of immobility or like capacity to do certain things. So that was like the most major and dramatic way it would show up for me, is that sometimes I literally physically could not do the things that I needed to do, whether it's, what they call activities of daily living, like getting dressed, brushing your teeth, that stuff, or more complicated things like going to work, lifting, physical things like that. So that was happening. And then the thing that hit me really hard and I think was really unexpected and really constant was the fatigue. the fatigue was really major. And unlike the inflammation in my joints, it was always there. The inflammation comes and goes. So I spent probably the first year or two just pushing through the fatigue and just doing things how I always did it and just ignored it. And then I would go through these cycles of like really pushing through, and then I would crash, and then I would get really sick and I wouldn't be able to do anything. And I just kept doing that over and over again. And after a while, I would just be in one of those crashes, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like what? Like something has to be different. I have to start approaching things differently. So the first thing I did was learn about something called activity pacing, which is starting to figure out a way of doing activities that it's not going to push you into that crash. It's a healthy balance of you're not like doing nothing, but you're also not doing too much. So it's figuring out what is my appropriate pace. And also because with autoimmune, your body is changing, it can be different every day. Starting to, learning how to tune into your body and asking, what am I able to do today? And adjusting based on whatever that capacity is. So I had to learn how to do that. So if I woke up one day and I was maybe feeling a little bit of stiffness in my joints, maybe feeling a little fatigued, I would pare back what I was doing that day and just focus on what were the things that had to get done. I made sure that those got done. And then after that, I would say, is there anything else that feels like it's something I can do? And maybe I would do it, or maybe I wouldn't. But regardless, I would always give myself more time to rest. Yeah. Go ahead. Look, if you want to say something.
I'm just thinking like if people out there are thinking to themselves like, no, I like the pushing through it part. What would be from your own experience? What happens? What is it that's making people? Your body is literally there. This is your intuition saying you need to slow down. People ignore that, and you're from your own experiences. You ignore that. Tell me about what happens in your brain that says, "Don't listen to that. I'm smarter than you."
Yes. I'll speak for myself personally. I am a very type A go-getter striver. I really, before my diagnosis, I really placed so much of my identity and my purpose on what I could do, what I could get done, what I could accomplish. And so I didn't want to let go of that. I wanted to have that identity as the responsible one, the one who showed up, the one who got things done, the one who was able to run 6 miles, like what have you. Like I wanted to be the doer because that's who I was. And letting that go meant my identity was shifting. And that is terrifying. I think that's something that is terrifying for everyone. So I had to let go of that and start to figure out, well, if that's not who I am, then who am I? And so that is a big reason why I personally had a hard time. And I think broadly, a lot of people do feel similarly because we are a capitalist, productive society and culture. So we do put a lot of value on what people can do and what they can produce. So we have so much pressure externally to also do things. So I think that's where it can come from, those external pressures and judgments, as well as whatever we've internalized.
And it's not only what we do to ourselves, which is usually horrible, right? But it's also what other people are placing on you because they don't see what you're experiencing.
They don't. And yeah, that was also something that was really challenging and that my clients have a really hard time with, is accepting that not everyone is going to understand and you can't make them. You can't force them to. So it's learning how to really build that self-trust and letting go of the need for everybody to understand is a big part of it.
And how do you assist your clients in that, like to navigate those experiences without feeling like they somehow have to prove that they're not lazy? Is that a word? I would assume that people like get called lazy, or because they're not doing things or listening to their intuition. But we're shaped for that.
Yeah, I think lazy is definitely one of them. I think a really common one is unreliable is something that I think people can be considered pretty often, especially with autoimmune, because you have highs and lows. You're there and then you're not there. So the first thing I work with my clients on is, like I said, building your own self-trust, because you have to work on that foundation. And I actually have done this myself and work with clients on this too. I'll actually encourage them to document times when they have actually listened to their body and followed their intuition, and then write what the outcome is. So, and then they do that many times and they can start to see a pattern of, oh, when I listen to my body, like, let's say I woke up that day and was feeling more tired and a little bit stiff, so I rested more that day. I was then able the next day to feel a lot better and be more productive, versus they can also, write down when they didn't listen to their intuition. So then maybe they just pushed through that day instead of resting. And then the next day they completely crashed. So they actually this is probably the scientist part of me that's like, let's get the data to see, like, hey, you actually can trust yourself. And then, so working on that while also letting go of the expectation that everyone is going to understand, because they're not. And then also trying to give people a little bit of grace when they can't understand, because I've seen and I think that when people don't understand, it's usually not because they have ill intent. It's that they don't have the capacity to have they can't like have that compassion for whatever reason, for whatever is going on with them themselves. They don't have the ability to do that. It's not you, it's them. It's what they have going on.
No,
so those are kind
of, yeah.
What was that? Sorry, go ahead.
You're absolutely right. It's their problem, not yours. Totally
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So don't, expend the energy trying to convince them of anything. So those are the two foundations we work from. And then this is along the lines when I talked about how to communicate in the workplace. It's really the same principles, just you don't need to over-explain to the majority of people. You can work on creating boundaries respectively. And when you get pushback, just stand firm but be respectful. And then when you have the closer relationships with people that have proved themselves to be trustworthy and supportive, then you can share more. I just really emphasize that when people are pushing back, and this is particularly if it's someone who hasn't earned the right for your full explanation, you don't have to give it. It's okay that, like, you don't have to over-explain. Just trust yourself and stand firm. And you know what? The outcome is probably going to be better for them in the long run as well.
And I think what you mean by that is you can just say, today's not a good day, I can't make it, rather than going into this, I woke up and I was a little achy, and yesterday I pushed myself and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or you can say, I don't feel well, I'm not up for it, instead of, given all the symptoms you're having.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they sound like BS to some people.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's a good point.
Or like, yeah, I have aches and pains every day. I still function. I still go to things. I still whatever. I still show up.
Yep, 100%.
But then we're talking about, you might be missing birthday parties. You might be having to cancel plans with friends. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. So what I encourage with clients is when you're dealing with very high important relationships, whether family, close friends, is that you have an open communication with them about, what are realistic expectations that you can have, and what are the ways that you can contribute and that you can show up that are within your capacity. So I with my close family and friends, I do share with them more details and sometimes quite a bit about what my illness is and how it shows up and how it really impacts my ability to do things. And in particular, my symptoms come and go. So I remind my friends often that, yes, I'm going to agree to go on a hike with you on this day, but just remember that there's a chance I might not be able to make it that day. Or maybe we can plan a backpacking trip and then have a plan B planned if that's going to be too much. So I try to just keep that line of communication going, so expectations are clear. And I also want to say that I wish that there weren't going to be times when we disappoint our loved ones, when we're disappointed that we missed something. That stuff is going to happen, and it's important that we talk about it, and we're all able to express our feelings about it in a safe way.
You also talk about sort of this black or white thinking. I'm either going to do this or I'm not. So one of the things you coach is to maybe have some gray areas. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. It is the all or nothing thinking is something that is incredibly common when you have a chronic illness, especially early on, because we are used to being able to do all of these things. I use the example for myself a lot that I'm a pretty active person, and I love being active. I love to run, walk, hike, what have you. So, and when I had started having my symptoms, I just stopped doing everything. I was like, well, I can't run, so I'm just not going to do anything physical. But that's not realistic. And if I am going to continue to take care of my health, my body, and my mind, physical movement is really important. So over time, I developed a whole bunch of different movement things I could do, whether it was yoga, video aerobics. I even found exercises I could do sitting in a chair, like aerobic exercises. So I had all of these options that were for times when specific parts of my body were swollen and unable to do certain movements. So, and I had them at the ready, so I could just pick from them, but based on how I was feeling that day. So I work with my clients on actually building that like catalog, whether it's food, whether it's movement, whether it's social activities, like having those plan Bs, Cs at the ready really helps you still show up for life in the way that you want to. Yeah.
Can you talk about the social piece? I think this affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
So talk about one of your clients and how you've made those plan A, B, and C's and how that worked out for them.
Yeah, I have a client who she is a social butterfly and she loves seeing her friends. It really gives her meaning and joy. And after her diagnosis, she just found that she couldn't leave the house as much. And that was really hard for her because she couldn't see her friends. So we thought, creatively about how she could continue to have those consistent meetups with her friends. And she talked to them and they decided to plan a weekly coffee over Zoom. So it's generally the same day and same time every week. They just get together, whether even if it's not for a super long time, might just be like 15 minutes. They all connect with their coffee and they catch up. And that way she has that consistent touch point with them and she doesn't have to leave the home. And at the same time, if she is feeling good that day, they might go somewhere. Like that option is still always there. But she still has the option of not leaving her home. And also the plan C is that maybe she's really having a really, really, really rough day and she can't get out of bed. She doesn't want to go on camera. She doesn't want to talk on the phone. They'll just text a little bit. The most important part is that that touch point is consistent, that they're still reaching out to her and she's still hearing from them.
And there's something that she can look forward to.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah.
And so part one of that is that you may have to modify what things looked like before. So like Megan has to modify what physical or what exercise looks like. It may not be running 6 miles. This is interesting because I would run 6 miles on my exercise and I tore my meniscus. And the doctor is like, we're not going to do surgery. Just don't do any, high impact activity. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that's, if you're not doing high impact, you're not exercising. Right? You really have to, right? You have to change the definition of what exercise is. And it turns out you can still get in a good exercise without pounding, without running. But that initial, like, what do you mean? This is a part of who I am.
Yeah, for sure. It really requires a paradigm shift that what we definitely think that, oh, well, socializing is going out of the house and doing this and this and that. And you have to kind of reframe and realize that there are other ways. There are other ways to connect. There are so many things you can do for exercise that are beneficial. So it's really just about openness and creativity. I think the more that you can cultivate those things, the easier it will be to navigate an illness.
One of the things that I've heard online is don't cry, modify. That's so true. But the other thing is, like what we talk about on this program, this show, is if you're using your intuition and you try to go against it, your body's like, I know better than you. So you can continue to act like you know better and you're just going to push it, but eventually I'm going to win. And if you don't listen to me, it's actually going to be worse.
Yes, I have lived that so many times, and I know my clients have as well. And yeah, I kind of feel like that when I had my diagnosis, my body was kind of saying, I've been here this whole time, and it's now time for you to pay attention. And like, I need you to pay attention because I have been trying to take care of you. And what is really interesting to me when I take a step back and I think about autoimmune conditions in general and what they are, it's really our bodies trying to protect us. They're doing it wrong. They're not getting it right, but they're doing their best and they think that they're helping. So our bodies are really, they're working for us. And when I remember that, it's easier for me to not get so mad at it when it is behaving in a way that I do not appreciate. And then I have to ask myself, well, what am I doing to support my body? How am I giving back to it? And that helps motivate me to do the things that I know are good for it.
And you're absolutely right, because when you're acting with anger towards anybody, including your body, what are you going to get back? But what if you change that to gratitude? Thank you for what you can do instead of I'm mad for what you can no longer do.
Yes, that is so true. Yeah.
There's a shift. And it's I'm not saying that's easy to do, but it sounds like your work with your clients is that you work with how do you get there?
Yeah, for sure. And I like to say that you're in relationship with your body, and with every relationship there are highs and lows. There are times when you do not get along and you're mad at each other. But you know ultimately that you're both working towards the same goal, and that goal is for you to survive and for you to be healthy. So that's the framework I like to use.
The other really important thing, we have 5 minutes left, but the other really important thing that I just took from what you said is that you have to have friends that will support wherever you are at that moment. And if you have those, this is where your intuition kicks in. If you have those people that are constantly saying, oh, you always do this, you're breaking your plan, making you feel guilty for listening to your body and sticking to what you know you need for yourself, and making you feel badly about that, which you are already doing yourself, you find that out here. The hard part is learning there are some people that I just cannot hang out with because I don't like how I feel, and they're not supporting where I am in this process.
Yeah, it's a really interesting journey to go on, is after your diagnosis and your life changes, how your friendships change. And you definitely will have friends, and I know that some of my clients have experienced this where they just, and I try to remind them as well, it's because they can't, for whatever reason, whatever they have going on, they can't take on what you have. And it's really hard, but you do have to create a little bit of distance, and you might have to put in some boundaries there. And you can do it in a loving way, but ultimately it's, you need to take care of yourself first. And then when you have those friends that are so understanding and accommodating and supportive, just cling on to them with all you have and give them as much love as you have, because they are such treasures. I am beyond grateful for my friends. I couldn't do this without them.
So really the big takeaway here is to listen when people are kind of giving you the ick and you feel like, I'm already struggling with my own guilt and my limitations. And when I have somebody externally making me feel poorly for that, I love that you said make better boundaries with them, because you're not saying you necessarily have to stop interacting with them.
Right.
It's just, if you have your home, right, and you have there's outside of your home, there's some people you're not going to let in your driveway. There's some people you're going to be like, you can sit in the driveway and we can talk in the driveway. There's some people you're going to let inside. You can decide what level you're going to allow them in, because you're already struggling with it yourself. So what is really the biggest takeaway that you want people to understand from this, our episode?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway I have is when you have some sort of event, whether it's a chronic illness, maybe losing a loved one, a job change, whatever it is that really rocks your world, to allow yourself to grieve the loss, and then work on creating a life based on what do you value and what brings you joy. And you can still have those things. It just, like, I forget the term that you said about modify. Oh, don't cry, modify.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. So I never want people to think that because their life is going to look different, that they can't still have meaning, purpose, and joy. And that's ultimately what my coaching is about.
So then a small, like, realistic shift is really a mindset.
100%. It's a mindset shift. And I also want to emphasize the importance of working on eliminating all or nothing thinking. That just because you can't do one thing like you could before doesn't mean you can't do something else that ultimately results in the same outcome that you want.
Absolutely. Megan, we have 1 minute left, but you actually have a support group monthly. Your website is underneath your name there. So I encourage everybody to go. And if you're a caregiver or somebody who struggles with illness, chronic illness, they can go to Megan's monthly support group. Megan, thank you so much for helping us to tap into our intuition. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all next time on another edition of Intuition Unleashed. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Intuition Unleashed. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. But before you go, we have one little challenge for you. Most of us have sneaky little habits that hold us back and trip us up, so why not take this not at all uncomfortable quiz to find out what you do to derail yourself from achieving your goals and how you can call yourself out on your own BS. So get to know your self-sabotage specialty and take the first step towards getting out of the way of your own success. Just visit https:/becknelson.com/quiz and take the quiz now. That's becknelson.com/quiz, and we can't wait to see your results. As always, we'll be back next week with more Intuition Unleashed. We appreciate you. Thanks for listening.